Good morning. Today we will start turbo machinery. In this chapter, we discuss the basic principle of common and important application of fluid mechanics, turbo machinery. We classify turbo machinery to two broad categories, pumps and turbines. Then we discuss both of these turbo machinery in more detail. In addition, we discuss how to properly match the requirement of a fluid flow system to the performance characteristics of turbo machine. A significant portion of this chapter is devoted to turbo machinery scaling laws, a practical application of dimensional analysis, classification and terminology. There are two broad categories of turbo machines, pumps and turbines. The word pump is general term for any fluid machine that adds energy to the fluid. Some authors call pumps energy problem device since energy is supplied to them and they transfer most of that energy to the fluid, usually by rotating shaft. The increase in fluid energy is usually felt as an increase in pressure of the fluid. Turbines, on the other hand, are energy producing devices. They extract energy from the fluid and transfer most of the energy to some form of mechanical output. Normally we think that energy supplied to pump increase the speed of the fluid passing through the pump and that a turbine extracts energy from the fluid by slowing it down. But this is not the case necessarily. Consider a control volume surrounding a pump. We assume steady conditions. By this we mean that neither the mass flow rate nor the rotation speed of the rotating blades change. Means your pump is moving at fixed speed and mass flow rate through the pump is fixed. So by conservation of mass, we know that the mass flow rate into the pump must be mass flow rate out of the pump for steady state conditions. If the flow is incompressible, the volume flow rate into the pump at the inlet and volume flow rate to the outlet must be same if fluid is incompressible. Further, if the diameter at inlet means d in is equal to d outlet, then conservation of mass require that average speed across the outlet and inlet must be same. It means the pump does not necessarily increase the speed of fluid passing through it. Rather, it increases the pressure of fluid. Of course, if the pump were turned off, there might be no flow at all. So, the pump does not increase the fluid speed compared to the case of no pump in the system. However, in terms of changes from the inlet to the outlet across the pump, fluid speed is not necessarily increased. In some cases, the fluid speed at the outlet diameter may decrease even. So we had kept this constant. Only one thing has increased, that is pressure at outlet is equal to pressure at inlet. So we can define the purpose of pump is to add energy to the fluid, resulting in increase in pressure, not necessarily increase in the fluid speed across the pump. Same, the purpose of turbine is to extract energy from the fluid, resulting in a decrease of the fluid pressure, not necessarily a decrease of fluid speed across the turbine. Pumps and turbines in which energy is supplied or extracted by a rotating shaft are properly called turbo machines. Since the Latin prefix turbo means spin, not all pumps utilize turbines, a rotating shaft. However, the hand operated air pump here inflates the tire by the reciprocating motion. So this is moreover called a fluid machine rather than a turbo machine because there is no rotatory part here. So turbines, regardless of whether they utilize a rotating shaft or not, fluid may also be broadly classified either positive displacement machines or dynamic machines based on the manner in which energy transfer occurs. In positive displacement machines, fluid is directed into the closed volume. Energy transfer to the fluid is accomplished by movement of boundary of the closed volume, causing the volume to expand or contract, thereby sucking fluid into squeezing fluid out respectively. Your heart is a good positive displacement pump because it has chamber and valves. So the fluid is enclosed in chamber and then valve is closed, then it is pumped out to the restricted space of the when your valve will open. Next is dynamic machine. A wind turbine example of dynamic machine. There is no closed volume in dynamic machine. Instead, rotating blades supply or extract energy to or from the fluid. For pumps, these rotating blades are called impeller blades, while for turbine, these rotating are called runner blades or buckets. Pumps. Some fundamental parameters are used to analyze the performance of pump.
The mass flow rate of a fluid through the pump M is an obvious primary pump performance parameter. For in-compressor flow, it is more common to use volume flow rate rather than mass flow rate. In the turbo machinery, volume flow rate is called capacity and is simply mass flow rate divided by density. We use this. Now the performance of pump is characterized additionally by its net head, defined as change in Bernoulli's head. So net head is equal to your outlet head minus inlet head. Now this is your Bernoulli's head, which include pressure head, velocity head and datum head. So this is your energy grade line here at inlet. This is your energy grade line at outlet. And this is your head raised by pump. So regardless of these different heads, we can write head in terms of EGL out minus EGL in. Now consider a special case when Z out is equal to Z in and outlet dia and inlet outlier are same. So in that case, these components will be neglected because they are both same and they will cancel out on both sides. You will get this head in terms of pressure out in by density G. Net head is proportional to user power actually delivered to the fluid. It is traditional to call this power the water horsepower, even if the fluid being pumped is not water. So to balance it and to make its dimensions in the power, we have to multiply head with mass flow rate into gravity, which is your water horsepower of the pump. But due to the losses in the pump, friction, internal leakage and separation of blade surfaces, turbulent dissipation, we have to supply more power than this, which is called brake horsepower of the shaft. Because pumps are run by shaft, you can see pump is run by shaft. So we have to apply brake horsepower to this shaft. So brake horsepower is equal to work of shaft, which in this case is omega into torque of shaft, where omega is rotational speed of the shaft and T shaft is the torque supplied to the shaft. We define pump efficiency as the W water horsepower divided by W shaft. So this is your efficiency of pump, which is density into gravity into V into H by omega into T shaft. Pump performance curves and matching a pump to a piping system. The maximum volume flow rate through a pump occurs when its net head is 0, H is 0. This flow rate is called pump's free delivery. So in this graph you had head, efficiency of pump and brake horsepower. So this part is called free delivery, where your flow rate of the pump is maximum, but your head is 0. Also this is your efficiency of the pump, and you can see efficiency of pump here is 0 because pump is not doing any work, useful work. It is not raising the head of the water. This is your shut off head. When your volume flow rate is 0, means the outlet is closed, the pump will do the maximum pressure, it will raise the head to the maximum value, this head. But again the efficiency is 0 at this point because your flow rate is 0. Although we are raising the pressure, but flow rate is 0. Now at these conditions your efficiency is 0 and it is not doing work. But in between you had this curve here, means pump is efficient, it is doing some work. And this is the line of head, means when you increase the volume flow rate, your head will decrease, and when you decrease the volume flow rate, your head will increase. So at here your pump performance is maximum. This is called best efficiency point because your pump is fully efficient. Maximum efficiency pump is you will get at this point. It is important to realize that study conditions, a pump can operate only along its performance curve. Thus operating point of a piping system is determined by matching system requirement. Net head to the pump performance, available net head. In a typical application, H required and H available match at one unique value of flow rate. This is called operating point or duty point of system. So this is your performance curve of the pump, and this is head required, and this graph is between flow rate and head. If your flow rate will increase, you will need more head to add to the water. For a given piping system with its major and minor losses, elevation changes, the required net head increase with volume flow rate. On the other hand, the available net head of most pumps decrease with the flow rate. You can say head is decreasing with the flow rate. at least over the majority of its recommended operating range. Hence the system curve and the pump performance curve intersect as sketched. You can see they are intersect at this operating point, and this establishes the operating point. If we are lucky, the operating point is at or near the best efficiency point of the pump, means we want this operating point of near to at this point BEP, that is best efficiency point. It is fairly straightforward to match a piping system to a pump once we realize that the term for useful pump head that we use in the head form of energy equation so is the same as the net head used in the present chapter. Consider for example a general piping system with the elevation change, major and minor losses are there, and fluid acceleration. We begin by solving the energy equation for the required net head H required. H required is equal to a head of the pump required, which is equal to P2 minus P1 rho g, which is change in pressure head, change in kinetic head, and change in datum head, plus total head loss. Head loss is within the pipes. So where we assume there is no turbine in the system, although the term can be added back if necessary. We have also included the kinetic energy correction factor, this alpha. If alpha and alpha 2 are often assumed to be unity if in a flow turbulent case, so you can solve this equation, and from here you will get this head. Now there are three you can say conclusions from this equation. First is it increases the static pressure of the fluid from point 1 to 2. You can see you can see this is the rise in the static pressure of fluid. It increases the dynamic pressure of the fluid from 1 to 2. This is dynamic pressure increase, and then this is your datum increase. Also to overcome irreversible head loss in the piping system. So these terms can be positive or negative, these three terms, but this is always positive. There is always some loss in the piping system. So this is head available by pump, but here is a problem that we had more than one possible operating points. We had 3 operating points. We have to avoid this type of pump because otherwise we are not sure at which point we are. So we have to avoid this type of pump, and operating point is equal to H required is equal to H available. Means what is the operating point where this available head of the pump will cut this required head, that is the operating point. So it is a single point on this line. In the most common situation is that an engineer selects a pump that is somewhat heftier than actually required. Operating point of a fan in a ventilation system. A local ventilation system hood and exhaust duct is used to remove air and contaminants produced by dry cleaning operation. So this is your hood, and we use a fan for the ventilation. The inner diameter of duct is 9.06 inch and its total length is 44 feet. There are 5 elbows along the duct, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Roughness value of duct is 0.15, means the roughness of the pipe, and each elbow has a minor loss coefficient. KL is equal to C0 is equal to 0.k. To ensure adequate ventilation, the minimum required volume flow rate through the duct is 600 cubic feet per minute. Hood manufacture, you can see hood entry lost by manufacturer is 1.3 based on duct velocity. Centrifugal fan is used with the inlet outlet diameter 9 inch. So this is centrifugal fan. The flow is steady, concentration of contaminant is very low, and will take air properties of air at 25 degrees Celsius, and atmosphere air is equal to 1 kilopascal, 101 kilopascal. So this is head required. Now this is neglected because air is very light. It is not much head needed to raise the level or altitude of the air. Also at the inlet outlet pressure is same, so P in is equal to P out. So this is also eliminated. Hood cross section is very large, so this velocity at inlet is also 0. We will consider this head loss, which is head loss in the pipe. So FL by D into V square by 2G, this is head loss in pipe, and this is KL, this is your loss in the elbows. Now Reynolds number is equal to, which is D velocity into kinematic viscosity, is this here in this case of duct. Diameter of duct is given, so Reynolds number is equal to this here. Now this Reynolds number is in this range. we can find from the Moody chart the friction factor for this roughness for air. Now this is the head required in case of pump after addition of all the components. Your kinetic head, then losses, you will get is 15.2 meter of air. This is 15.2 meter of air head. We have to convert it to the in terms of height of water by multiplying the ratio of air density to the water density, because manufacturer performer data is given in the terms of this, which is in terms of for water. So we have to required inches of water is equal to H required air into density of air by density of water. So this inches of water head, this is required. So now we repeat the calculation at several values of volume flow rate and compare to the available net head of the fan. So this red line shows that these values are available by the manufacturer for the particular fan blower. The operating point is at a value volume flow rate of about 60-50 cubic meter cube, at which the both the required and available net head equal about 0.83 inches of water. We conclude that the chosen fan is more than educated for the job. So this is your head requirement, which will increase with the flow rate, and this will cut at this point. This is called operating point, and this is 0.83 inches of H2O, and required is 0.709. So it means our selected fan blower is sufficient to fill this requirement. It is common in pump industry to offer several choices of parallel diameter for a single casing. There are several reasons for this. To save manufacturing cost, to enable capacity increase by a simple parallel placement, to standardize installation mountings, and to enable use of equipment for different applications. When plotting the performance of such a family of pumps, pump manufacturers do not plot separate curves. So this is your head here, this is the efficiency curve, and this is your curve with respect to volume flow rate. So these are for different diameters of the pump, and this is your efficiency here. You know the efficiency will increase and then it will decrease. So on this line there are 2 points. Now when you join this point, you will get this type of curves here at different diameters of pump. So this is head in feet, this is flow in gallons per minute. This is your head with respect to flow rate. As we know, your flow rate increase, head will decrease, and you can select say 2 horsepower pump. So this is the line which represents its head and the volume flow rate. This is a 3 horsepower pump. We can use this pump for this range. Means when your point lies somewhere in between below this curve, you can use this 3 horsepower pump, and you can use 5 horsepower pump in this range, and 7 horsepower to fulfill these requirements, and 15 horsepower pump can raise this head, and it is valid for these requirements. Pump cavitation and net positive suction head. When pumping liquids, it is possible to local pressure inside the pump to fall below vapor pressure of the liquid, PV. PV is also called saturation pressure. V saturated as illustrated in thermodynamics, stable as a function of saturation temperature. Now if pressure less than vapor pressure, vapor filled bubbles called cavitation bubbles appear. In other words, the liquid boils locally, typically on the suction side of the rotating parallel plates where pressure is lowest. So this is your pressure side and this is your suction side. This is your cavitation bubble fold, and when your cavitation bubble flash, they will impinge on the plate and they will corrode the surface. To avoid cavitation, we must ensure the local pressure average inside the pump stay above the vapor pressure. It is called net positive suction head in terms of head, which is equal to this pump inlet minus this. So this is the head which is with the volume flow rate, and this is net pressure suction head required, and you can say it will increase with the volume flow rate. The larger the volume flow rate, larger it should be the net positive suction head. Now this is your actual net pressure suction head in case of a pump. This is required net pressure suction head toward cavitation, and this is the head which a pump will create. Now if you can see, when this cut this line, and beyond this there is cavitation start to form. So we have our pump should operate in this range to avoid any cavitation. Therefore the value of NPSH decrease with the volume flow rate, you can see here. By identifying the volume flow rate at which the curves of actual NPSH and NPSH required intersect, we estimate the maximum volume flow rate that can be delivered by pump without heavy cavitation. So this is the maximum volume flow rate which pump can deliver without cavitation. Maximum flow rate to avoid pump cavitation. So we had this pump here which is 11.25 impeller, and the water is pumped from 25 degrees from reservoir whose surface is 4 feet above the pump. So this surface is 4 feet above the pump and this reservoir is at atmosphere pressure. The piping system from the reservoir to pump consists of 10.5 feet long cast iron pipe. This is 10.5 feet long pipe within a diameter of 4 inch. Roughness is given. There are several minor losses. A sharp edged inlet, this is equal to 0.5. 3 flange smooth of 90 degree rectangular elbows. So there are 3 flange, 1, 2, 3 with KL is equal to 0.6. If the water were warmer, would this be maximum flow rate increase or decrease? Also we have to estimate the maximum volume flow rate that can be pumped without cavitation. Now we apply energy equation at 1 and 2. This is energy equation here at the 1 point, this is energy equation at 2 point. Between 1 and 2 there is no pump and turbine, so it will cut out. And at the reservoir velocity 0, it is a still position, this is not visible here, it will be cancelled out. From here you can find this value P2 by rho g. This is pump inlet pressure head available. Notice that your P1 is equal to atmosphere pressure. There P1 is equal to atmosphere pressure. This is net positive suction head which is NPHS, which is equal to this. You can put Py dash to G here and you will get the net PS positive suction head. So you will get this here. This is net positive suction head available at the pump. Now their head loss is equal to this, which is equal to due to friction and due to the elbow. So KL is equal to 6. Here KL is equal to 0.3 at each elbow and KL is 0.5 at sharp end. So these are minor losses and we know minor loss is proportional to V square by 2G. So put here all the minor losses. So you will get total head put into this equation and you will get available net positive suction head at the pump. We make one calculation by hand. First for taking volume flow rate is equal to 40 gallon per minute, which is equal to this meter pool per second. Now you can find the velocity from this data. You can find Raund number and you can find roughness, which is this, and from Coolbrooke equation you can find this as friction factor from Moody chart. Now we put all these values into this next pressure positive suction head and we will get this equation, which is 23.5 feet. This is the required net positive suction head with the flow rate, and this is the available net positive suction head at 60 degrees Celsius and this is at 25 degrees Celsius, and our volume flow rate is 400, in which case the NPSH requirement is equal to 4 feet while available is 23.5 feet, which is much higher. You can see it is 23.5 feet. You can see the cavitation will occur at 600 correspond to this temperature and it will occur at this point correspond to this, but we are below this value, so there is no point of cavitation. We need not to worry about the cavitation and we use EES or spreadsheet to calculate NPSH as a function of volume flow rate. To calculate this we have to use EES. If water were warmer than 25 degrees Celsius, the vapor pressure would increase, the viscosity would decrease and the density would decrease slightly.
The calculations are repeated at 20 degrees 62 from 60 degrees Celsius, and we will get the vapor pressure is equal to this. So the results are also plotted in this figure here at 60 degrees Celsius, where we see that the maximum volume flow rate without cavitation decreases with temperature to about 55 GPM at 60 degrees Celsius. You can say it is decreased. You can say at this point this is decreased by this much amount. This decrease agrees with our intuition since warmer water is already closer to its boiling point from the start.
Pump in series and parallel. When faced with the need to increase the volume flow rate or pressure rise by a small amount, you might consider adding an additional smaller pump in series or parallel with the original pump. So these are two pumps in series and these two pumps are in parallel. So a better course of action is to increase the original pump's speed, input power, replace the parallel with a larger one, or replace the entire pump with a larger one. The logic for this decision can be seen from the pump performance curves, realizing that pressure rise and volume flow rate are related. So arranging dissimilar pumps in series may create problems because of the volume flow rate through each pump must be same, but the overall pressure rise is equal to the pressure rise of one pump plus that of other. If the pumps have a widely different performance curves, the smaller pump may be forced to operate beyond its free delivery flow rate, whereupon it acts like a head loss, reducing the total volume flow rate. Arranging dissimilar pumps in parallel may create problems because of overall pressure rise must be same, but the net volume flow rate is the sum of that through each branch. If the pumps are not sized properly, the smaller pump may not be able to handle the large head imposed on it. So you can say the combined net head in n pumps is equal to the sum of the heads. So this is we had three pump where pump is weakest and pump third is the strongest pump here, and pump 2 has intermediate power. Now this is shut off head of combined pumps and it is equal to sum of this head and this head. This is equal to this. Now beyond the free delivery of pump 1 P1, which is this, the pump 1 should be shut off and bypassed, otherwise it will be running beyond its maximum designed operating point. Means if you still run this pump at this location, this is beyond the design, so we have to shut off this pump at this point. Further, the next head across this pump would be negative as previously discussed. Now you can at this point you can see clearly the head of the first pump is lost because it is shut off. So with this head is the shut off head of combined pumps, which is 2 and 3. So this is combined of 2 and 3. Now this is free delivery of pump 2, and beyond this it should also be shut off and bypassed. So this head is available head of the third pump only, pump 3, corresponding to this flow rate. So at this is H3 only. Combined capacity of n parallel pumps, which is equal to V combined, is equal to sum of the volume of individual pump. So take example here in which you had pump in parallel. Combined pump performance is shown in the figure. So here we have 1, 2, 3 pump. This is again head is the total of the maximum head of this pump. This is shut off head of combined pumps and this is free delivery of combined pumps. This is combined capacity, which is the volume flow rate. It is equal to this. For low values of net head, the capacity of 3 pumps in parallel is equal to V1 plus V2, V3. So when the head requirement is this, the dash line, below this dash line, you can operate in this range. But when your head requirement will increase up to this point, then you have to pump 1 should be shut off, because this one pump is won't able to meet this head requirement, which is above this, above the shut off head of pump 1, above the first horizontal dash carry line. The pump 1 should be shut off and its branch should be blocked with a valve, otherwise it would be running beyond its maximum designed operating point and the pump or its motor could be damaged. So this is the dash line. So beyond that we have to switch off this pump. Now this first pump block, your combined capacity is equal to V2 plus V3. Similarly, above the shut-off head of pump 2, if the head is above this point, so this is gray line. So above this line you have to shut off the second pump and block its valve also. So in this case the two pumps are shut off. Now only one pump is left, and in this case volume flow rate is V3 and head is in this range. Several pumps may be combined in parallel to deliver a large volume flow rate. Examples include banks of pump used in circulating water of cooling tower and chilled water loops. So these pumps are run in parallel configuration. Also, it is wise to install check valve in each branch so that when a pump needs to shut off and for the maintenance or when the required flow is low, backflow through pump is avoided. Positive displacement pump. People have designed numerous positive displacement pumps throughout the centuries. In design, fluid is sucked into the expanding volume and then pushed along. The volume contracts, but the mechanism that causes this change in volume differs greatly among the various designs. Some designs are very simple, like the flexible tube pump that compress a tube by small wheels pushing the fluid along. This is a flexible tube peristaltic pump. Here this is your double screw pump. Here is one more pump. So this is a rotary pump with the two lobes on each rotor. So gap exists between rotor and housing between the lobes and rotor should be themselves cause a leakage, reducing pump's efficiency. High viscosity fluid can penetrate the gaps easily, hence the net head and efficiency of rotor pump generally increased with the fluid viscosity as shown in figure. You can see the efficiency can increase, there is a head loss. So this is the one reason why rotary pumps are good choice for pumping highly viscous fluids and slurries. They are used, for example, as automobile engine oil pumps in the food industry and heavy liquids like syrup, tomato and paste and chocolate slurries. The pump performance of a rotary pump is nearly vertical. You can see this is almost vertical and this is the head here, and throughout its recommended operating range. The pump performance curve of a rotary pump is nearly vertical throughout its recommended operating range. You can see the head is same, even the volume flow is same because this is a positive distillate pump. However, you can say this is your gray area which is avoided to operate. The reason is at very high values of net head correspond to very high pump outlet pressure, leaks become more severe even for high viscosity fluids. In addition, the motor driving the pump cannot overcome the large torque caused by this high outlet pressure, and the motor begins to suffer stall overload which may burn out the motor. Therefore, rotary pump manufacturers do not recommend operation of the pump above a certain maximum net head, which is typically well below the shut-off head. The pump performance curves supplied by the manufacturer often do not even show this area, means it is recommended to operate in this range to avoid overload on the motor. Now, positive displacement pump have many advantages over dynamic pumps. For example, a positive displacement pump is better able to handle shear sensitive liquid since the induced shear is much less than that of dynamic pump operating at a similar pressure and flow rate. Bread is a shear sensitive liquid, and this is the one reason why positive displacement pumps are used for artificial hearts. A well sealed positive displacement pump can create a significant vacuum pressure at its inlet even when dry. Means if you can say this is self-priming pump, even if there is no water in this, it can lift the pump from at the depth, and so it is called self-priming pump. Finally, the rotors of a positive displacement pump run at lower speed and then the rotor of a dynamic pump at similar loads, extending the useful item. Dynamic pumps. There are three main types of dynamic pump that involve rotating blades called impeller blades or rotor blades, which impart momentum to the fluid. For this reason, they are sometimes called rotor dynamic pumps or simply rotary pumps. So there are three types of pump. One is your centrifugal flow pump. So this is your centrifugal flow pump. The fluid enters axially and it will go radially in the outward direction. There is another pump which is called mixed flow pump. In this case, fluid will enter into the axial direction and it will go in this direction, which is intermediate between this pump, centrifugal flow pump, and this pump, which is axial flow pump.
So then the axial flow pump, the fluid will come into the axial direction and it will leave from the axial direction. Central pumps and blowers can be easily identified by snare-shaped casing. You can see this is your snare-shaped casing here. They are using in car, in hair heating units, in your washing machine, in blowers, fans, bathroom, kitchen. The second diagram of central pump is shown in figure. Note that the shroud often surrounds the impeller blades to increase the blade stiffness. So this is your pump here. This is one side view. This is another side of view. So this is side and frontal view of a typical central pump. Fluid enters axially in the middle of the pump from here and is flung around it. The outside by the rotating blade assembly is diffused into the expanding diffuser. So this here part is diffuser here. This part is diffuser. While going to the diffuser, its kinetic energy will convert to the pressure energy. So where R1 and R2 are the radius, this is your inlet radius at the entry level and this is outlet at exit. Where this B1 is the inlet blade width and B2 is the inlet outlet blade width at the outlet section. In the pump terminally, the rotating assembly that consists of shaft, the hub and the impeller blades and the impeller shroud is called impeller or rotor. So this casing which contains shaft and your impeller, this is your rotating part and rest is your stationary part which is the outer casing and the inlet of the pump. Fluid enters actually through the hollow middle portion of the pump, after which it enters the rotating blade. It requires tangential and radial velocity by momentum transfer with the impeller blades and requires additional radial velocity by so-called centrifugal forces, which are actually a lack of sufficient centrifugal forces to sustain circular motion. When your fluid will enter, it has a less centrifugal force, and as the fluid will go, you can say energy is imparted by the impeller to the fluid and its centrifugal force will increase, which will be further converted into diffuser into pressure energy. The flow leaves the impeller after gaining both speed and pressure as it is flung radially outward into the scroll, also called volute. As sketched, the scroll is a snail-shaped diffuser, so whose purpose is to deaccelerate the fast-moving fluid, leaving the trailing edge of the impeller blade, thereby further increasing the fluid's pressure, and to combine the direct the flow from all blade passes toward the common outlet. So this is your here volute casing. The purpose of this is to take all the fluid, and as the fluid will go along this diffuser, the pressure will increase due to the increase in cross-section area of this. So there are three types of central pump that warrant discussion based on the impeller blade geometry. So they are backward inclined blades, radial blades and forward inclined blades. So this is a central pump with impellers in backward direction. This is central pump with radial blades and this is forward blades. There are own disadvantages. Central pumps with radial blades have a simpler symmetry and produce a larger pressure rise of the three. Central pumps with forward blades produce a pressure rise that is nearly constant, and you can see the backward case they yield highest efficiency of the three because of fluid flows into and out of the blade passage with the least amount of turning. Sometimes the blades are airfoil shaped, yielding similar performance but ever higher efficiency. So net head and brake horsepower of performance curves for these three types of central pumps are compared in this figure. The curves have been adjusted such that each pump achieves the same frequency free delivery. This is the volume flow rate. So you can see this pink line for the backward, this dark line for forward and dotted line for radial. As you can see, the backward blades consume less power and the forward blades will produce the least head and the radial blades produce the highest head in this case. Actual performance curves may be different. We do analysis for this in steady flow, and we consider only incompressible flow, and we consider only radial and normal velocity component, that is N for normal, and the circumferential or tangential velocity component subscript T for blade inlet and blade outlet. So this is normal component of velocity and this is also your normal component of velocity. Also we consider the inlet velocity to be very negligible. It is in axial direction. So the radial velocity inlet is 0. In other words, also there is a non-zero axial component of velocity throughout the impeller.
it does not enter our analysis. A close-up side view of a simplified central pump is sketched, where we define Vn1 and V2n as the average normal component of velocity at radii R1 and R2. So this R1 is the inlet of the impeller blade, R2 is the outlet of the impeller blade. So volume fluid V dot entering the eye of the pump pass through the circumferential cross-section area defined by width V1 at radius R1. So this is the velocity at this point and the volume fluid is V1. So at this is the width of the impeller. You can see volume fluid is equal to 2 pi R1 V1 V1. So the volume fluid is circumferential. You can see this is in the circulation direction, means from center to outward direction, and the volume fluid at inlet must be equal to at outlet. So this is at the blade outlet. At this point the volume fluid will be same. We will use V2 into 2 pi R2. Now at this R2 is this. Definitely V2 is more because this cross section area decrease. So between V1 and V2 this is the combination. You can find velocity if you know V1 and these parameters of the blade. We sketch close-up frontal view of one impeller blade where we show both radial and tangential velocity components. So this is your here impeller. This is the impeller eye. From here fluid will enter. This is radius R1 at the entry of the fluid, and this is R2 at exit of the blade. This omega R is your radial component. This is omega R2 radial component outlet. This one. This is R2 and this is R1. This is radial component of velocity. This is backward blade, and this analysis hold good for other types of blade also, whether if they are forward or radial. We define beta 1 as the blade angle to the reverse tangential direction at radius R1, and we define the angle beta 2 trailing edge angle as the blade angle related to the reverse tangential direction at radius R2. We also assume the flow is everywhere tangent to the blade surface when viewed from the reference frame rotating the blade. At the inlet, this approximation sometimes called shockless entry condition, not to confuse with shock wave. So it means that your velocity at the blade at every point is tangent to the at that point. This is, and it's parallel to, you can see parallel to the blade. This is parallel to the blade, tangent at that point. So this is V1 relative, this is V2 relative. So this also means that there is no flow separation anywhere along the blade surface. If the central pump operates at or near its design location, this assumption is valid. So velocity V1 relative and V2 relative are drawn in this figure. So these are the velocity vectors seen from the relative reference frame of an observer moving with the rotating blade. When we vectorally add tangential velocity omega R1 to VR1 relative, if you add this omega R1 and V1 relative, you will get a velocity vector V1, which is the fluid velocity V1 at the blade inlet, and exactly in the same way when you add this V2 relative and omega R2, you will get V2. This is the, we obtain absolute velocity at the blade outlet. While we have assumed this normal velocity, and this normal velocity is perpendicular to the blade in the radial outward direction. Now this V1 and V2 are, this is the normal velocity. So these normal velocities are also shown, and they are independent of which frame of reference we use, absolute or relative. We also introduce angle alpha 1 and alpha 2 defined as the angle of departure of the absolute velocity vector from the normal direction at radius R1 and R2. So this is alpha 1 and alpha 2. These are angle of departure at inlet and outlet. This angle is between the absolute velocity and between the normal velocity vector, and this is your tangential component of the velocity, this vector, and this here is your tangential component of the velocity. So for analysis purpose of this case, we will take this control volume. So this gray area is your control volume here, and this is a torque supplied to the shaft, and this omega is shaft speed. Since the momentum is defined as the cross product R into V, only the tangential component V1 and V2 are relevant to shaft torque. It turns out that a shaft torque is equal to the change in momentum from inlet to outlet as given by Euler turbo machine equation. So shaft torque is equal to density into volume flow rate into R2 V2 minus R1 V1T, where now Euler's turbo machine equation in alternative form, that is T shaft, which is equal to density into volume flow rate into R2 V2 sin alpha 2. Instead of this, you can write in terms of V2, and here you can also write. Now we will assume here that pump efficiency is equal to 1, which means that the water horsepower and the brake horsepower are the same, means we had assumed no losses. Now we had torque of shaft. If you multiply by omega, you will get unit of you can say horsepower or brake horsepower, which is equal to this. If you multiply this equation by omega, now this energy is used to raise the head. We can express as density to gravity to volume to head. So net head is equal to this. The head rise in this machine, in this centrifugal pump. In order to design the shape of parallel head, we must use trigonometry to obtain expression for V1T and V2T in terms of blade angles beta 1 and beta 2. Apply law of cosine on this V2 in terms of you will give the resultant in terms of this, and cos alpha. You will get this here. So V2 square is equal to V2 square relative plus omega square R2 square minus 2 omega R2 V2 relative cos beta 2. Now we know that V2 relative cos beta 2 is equal to this. Also you can see, if you subtract from omega R2 this V2T component, you will get this component, and this component is equal to this V2 relative cos component. Also you can do for here. So this is V2 relative cos beta 2 is equal to omega R2 minus V2. You can put this here, and you will get this equation here on solving. Now you can same obtain relation for the blade inlet, which is by merely changing the subscript of this equation and put this equation in this equation. You will get head in terms of velocity 3 vector, which is this head in terms of 3 vector, or you can say that in case of no reversible losses, the net head is proportional to the change in absolute kinetic energy plus the rotative kinetic energy minus the change in relative kinetic energy from inlet to outlet of the impeller. Now you can replace this head in the Bernoulli's equation at two sections for outlet and inlet, and when you replace the head, the two terms will cancel out, means this term will cancel out with the Bernoulli's equation term, and you will get this equation. Note that we are not limited to analysis of the only inlet and outlet. Now you can use this equation for any two radii along the impeller in general. Then write an equation that is commonly used as the Bernoulli's equation in rotating reference frame. You can generalize this as. So you can use this equation at any point on the impeller. There are infinite numbers of points on the impeller, and you can use for finite number of points. Now this extra component here is your for the rotational effect, because since we are using relative speed here, so this extra term appears in the equation account for rotational effects. Now this is the equation you have had. If you have to obtain maximum head, you have to make this term 0, which is our design criteria. We are assuming that there is no mechanism in the eye of a pump that can generate a negative value of V1T. Thus the first order approximation for the design condition of pump is set V1T 0. We select blade angle beta 1, this angle, in a way that the flow is purely radial from the absolute reference frame. So it means V1 is equal to normal is equal to V1. So the velocity vector R is equal to R1 at this position, and magnified and redrawn this figure here. Now you can see this is your relative velocity, this is your tangential velocity. Now there V1t is equal to omega R1 this minus this component, which is V1n by 10 beta 1. So now your when V1t is 0, in that case your V1n and V2n with this V1 become equal, these two vectors become equal. Now equate this 0, we will get this relation between omega R1 and this. And now replace this omega R1 in the volume flow rate. So replace in this, you will get volume flow rate. This primary design of central pump. A central pump is designed to pump liquid effluent at room temperature and atmospheric pressure. The impeller inlet outlet area is given. R1 is 100, R2 is 180 mm, and inlet width is 50 and outlet width is 30. You can see this is our impeller inlet, this is outlet. So this is beta 1 and this is your beta 2 angle. So the pump is deliver 0.25 meter per second liquid at the net head of 14.5 meter when the impeller rotates at this 720 rpm. Design the blade shape for the case in which these operating conditions are design conditions of pump, especially V1t is equal to 0. Also predict the horsepower required by pump. So we will first calculate the power required to run the pump, that is your density to gravity to volume to head raised. We had all this parameter given in here in this question. This is your pump required power required to run your pump. So now in terms of brake horsepower, if you divide by 746 watt, you will get this 59 horsepower. That is in terms of horsepower. We assuming no loss and 100% efficient pump here. Now we know omega is equal to this here. We know RPM of and divide by 2 pi, or you can multiply by 2 pi divide by 60. We will get the omega in radian per second. Now we also know this volume flow rate is equal to this in terms of, you can calculate tan beta 1 here, which is the part of design part of the blade, beta 1 angle. All parameters are given here. Now you can beta 1 which is equal to 23.8 degree. So we had got beta 1 here. Now we find beta 2 by utilize the equation derived earlier for our element analysis. First for the design condition in which V1t is equal to 0, you can find head by putting this term 0. You will get this equation here, and you can find V2 from this equation. Now if you have V2 velocity here from this equation, we also know that the volume flow rate at the outlet of the impeller is this. So this is volume flow rate at outlet of the pump. So V2 and we have volume flow rate is we had. We also know this is the condition which we had tried earlier by just placing 1 beta 2, you will get at outlet. We get this equation here, and from here you can find beta 2 in terms of this. So beta here is 14.7 degree. So this will, our inlet angle is 24 and outlet is equal to 15. So this is backward inclined impeller. So you can see this is beta 1 here, this is beta 2. So this gray one blade is with the minimum length of the blade, while this black one is the maximum length of the blade, and this pink is the shortest blade. How many blades should we use in impeller? If we use 2 fluid blades, circulatory fluid loss will high. Circulatory loss occurs because there is a finite number of blades. Recall that our primary analysis, we assume the uniform tangential velocity V2 around the entire circumference of outward control volume. But you can see here the V2 is here V2t, and because the missing of the blade, its velocity will decrease here. then again increase again, decrease, increase. So this will happen, but we have analysis, we have to assume that the velocity is uniform at this circulatory. This is strictly correct only if we have an finite number of relatively thin blades. In a real pump, suppose the number of blades is finite and the blades are not relatively thin. As a result, the tangential component of absolute velocity is not uniform but drops off in the space between the blades. The net result is efficiently smaller value of V2T, which in turn decreases the actual net head. This loss of net head and pump efficiency is called circulatory flow loss. On the other hand, if we have too many blades, you can see here we have too many blades, so this will still a problem. So this there is a loss of head is called circulatory flow loss. On the other hand, if we had too many blades, there will be excessive flow blockage loss and loss due to growing boundary layer, again leading to non-uniform flow speeds at outer radius of the pump and lower net head and efficiency. So these losses are called passive losses. So this is the head versus volume flow rate performance of the curve. This is your predicted performance, but due to irreversible losses in the blade side, this is your actual performance is less than the predicted performance. The predicted performance curve is nearly linear with the volume flow rate both above and below design conditions, since the term this in equation is small compared to this term. Also this term is very small compared to this term, and we had also neglected this term in the design analysis. Also there is a leakage of fluid between blades and casing, and there is swirl of fluid in region, and also there are eddies, there are circulatory flow loss, passive loss, irreversible distribution of swirling eddies in the volume, and among other things are the cause for deviation from the predicted performance.